Let's see what is the metaphysics of Srimad Bhagavatam. And before going to Srimad Bhagavatam, we also would have to look at the metaphysics of Gita, because that's the basic on which the whole metaphysics of, in one sense, the Vedic literature is also existing. It is personally spoken by the Supreme Lord, so it has the essence of all the Vedic literature. Bhagavad Gita has that extreme credit of having personally spoken by the Supreme Lord with a concern for his devotees. It was not just spoken generically, but with a specific concern for addressing the questions of Arjuna and guiding everyone. And so the metaphysics of Bhagavad Gita deals with, we all know, the five primary subject matters. That is the Supreme, the Ishvara, the Jiva, the soul, Prakriti, material nature, Karma, the loss of karma, and Kala, time. But this is all explained to actually exemplify the concept of yoga. That is, how can the Jiva connect with the Ishvara? So all of the Bhagavad Gita is arranged around this concept of yoga, which is a subtopic, which is seems like the subtopic, but is the central topic of the Bhagavad Gita. So that is why Krishna spends and so much energy in explaining all the different yogas. And the Bhagavad Gita itself is divided into three sections: karma, jnana, and bhakti. So yoga is the central subject, and all the other metaphysical elements are aligned to that concept, that how can the jiva connect with Ishvara? Okay, it can connect through karma yoga, it can connect through jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga, or dhyana yoga, or bhakti yoga. And Krishna says, I prefer bhakti. I prefer if someone connects with me through the process of bhakti yoga. So in this way, metaphysics of Bhagavad Gita stops here. It gives an overall understanding of these elements and then hints towards the direction of bhakti. And Srimad Bhagavatam takes that metaphysics of Bhagavad Gita, in a very elaborate way. So don't get bewildered with this diagram. This is the product of my fertile imagination. I just wanted to show that how all these things are expanded in the Bhagavatam in a very elaborate way. If you take any topic from the metaphysics of Bhagavad Gita, it's extensively discussed in the Bhagavatam. If you just think of Jiva, then Srimad Bhagavatam goes to the extent of discussing the types of species, like what are the different kind of living entities that exist in this world, like how they all come about. In the creation of the Bhagavatam section, we discuss all the different kinds of species that will be created, from snakes to human beings. And in that also, various different categories of human beings will be discussed. Conditioned, but we all have different natures. And even if somebody out of many, somebody may become a sadhaka. And that also, there are many paths. Somebody may be a mixed devotee, somebody can be a rajasic, tamasic, or satvika bhakti, or some shuddha bhakti. All of that is discussed. Sadhakas of different degrees, and then pure devotees are discussed, and eternal associates are discussed. They are jiva tattva, but they are like different. They are eternal associates. And the mind, ego, and intelligence with which the jiva struggles, that is also very clearly explained in the Bhagavatam. So if you just think of Jiva, then there is so much detail given. And if you think of Ishvara, then all the incarnations of the Lord is discussed. Krishna is specifically discussed. The pastime and the associates of the Supreme Lord is discussed. And the various relationships, rasa is discussed. The spiritual world is discussed. Vaikunta is discussed. And Goloka is discussed. Vrindava is discussed. And also the supremacy of the Lord over other devatas are discussed. So in this way, if you consider the path of yoga, specifically bhakti, then bhakti in the three modes, and bhakti, Shuddha bhakti is discussed, and sadhana bhakti is discussed with its various stages, and its comparison with other yogic paths like the dhyana yoga. Kapil Dev describes jnana and sankhya. It is compared with bhakti and establishes the supremacy of bhakti over all other sadhanas by Shukadeva Goswami in the beginning of Canto 2. So Bhagavatam discusses all of these details of the process of bhakti. And if you come to material nature, oh my God, there is so much discussed about the material nature itself, that the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material nature is discussed. Cosmology from a Adi Bhuta and Adi Daivik perspective is discussed in Bhagavatam. Kala, the time details of its calculation and all of that is discussed in the third canto. Karma, Kapil Dev extensively describes that how the living entity travels in this world because of its good and bad karmas, and what kind of punishments in the hellish planets. All of that is also described. And the miseries of material existence, is very clearly explained through various pastimes and stories and philosophy and prayers. And in this world, for the living entity to practice bhakti, it also needs a stable social support system. So some details of the varnashrama system is also described. And I couldn't even put many other things here. Manus are discussed, like how they manage this material world, established by a support system, and they protect. All of that is also discussed. So the metaphysics of Bhagavatam, if you consider Bhagavad Gita, it's like 10x, 100x of that metaphysics of Srimad Bhagavatam. Every aspect of that details is explained in as much as possible within the 18,000 verses is given for us to appreciate the process of bhakti and the Supreme Lord. With all that is the intent of explaining all of these things. So I hope this kind of answered your question, Ravish Prabhu.
Yes, so in a sense, we can say that this Bhagavatam is an elaborated form of Bhagavad Gita where it explains each and every thing which has been stated in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, we could say that
Okay.
in one perspective. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any thoughts, questions? So far, we saw why Srimad Bhagavatam, why that book very specifically, and then we saw the objective and theme of Srimad Bhagavatam, the overarching theme of Srimad Bhagavatam, and now we saw about the metaphysics of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we aren't even scratching the surface of it. But if any of these things are very confusing, the previous slide, all we need to understand is the metaphysics of Bhagavatam again on a very higher level is like how can we awaken love for Krishna and what is required for that. We need to become a devotee and we need to know the understanding of the process of bhakti and we need to know who the Supreme Lord, our object of worship is. So the details of all of these three with an complete focus of awakening our love for Krishna is what is the underlying metaphysics of Bhagavatam.